Hello and welcome to episode 44. We've covered the Carpenters, who are the masters of harmony vocals. Well, I had a couple of questions about how do you do it live? Well, I can probably answer that, certainly from my own perspective. One of the things that I've been involved with for years now is a Beach Boys tribute band. Now, the Beach Boys and the Carpenters have got some common background, haven't they? Both pretty decent at working in the studio and creating amazing products. Brian Wilson with the Beach Boys locked himself away in the studio, come out months or even possibly years later with sort of songs that last forever. And their style, of course, was perhaps more akin to barbershop, but there's little bits of barbershop in the Carpenters from time to time, isn't there? But different sorts of music. And I thought it'd be good to have a look at how the Beach Boys music works when you try and translate that to on stage. Now, that's one of the big problems. There always seems to be things that get in the way. But essentially, when you look at the Beach Boys, it's a bunch of guys went in the studio, recorded a load of songs, and then were forced to go and perform them live. Well, when you've spent weeks like the Carpenters, months maybe, making sure that everything is just perfect in the studio, how on earth are you supposed to do that live? Because you've got a limit to the number of people in the band. So if we look at the Beach Boys, typically a five-piece, they're going to be on stage and they're going to be lacking a lot of stuff. Certainly they'll be lacking all the clever arrangements that were done. They'll also be lacking voices. So what do? Nowadays it's a bit easier. I suppose the best word for it is we cheat. There are lots and lots of live bands now that actually pre-record stuff and use it on stage. I don't think there's anything really wrong with that, because if you're a tribute band, the people who are paying to see you are paying for tickets to listen to music that they know very well and love. It doesn't matter what kind of band it is, whether it's sort of easy listening, whether it's rock, whatever. The idea is that your punters in the audience know the songs perhaps even better than you sometimes. And what you have to do is give them what they want. That's the difficulty. So with 4 or 5 people on stage, how do you give them what they want? Now, your choices are you thin it out a bit and make do with the voices and the instruments that are being played. So in the case of my Beach Boys tribute band, there are 4 of us. There's not 5. 4 of us. So that's a limit of 4 voices, and that's a limit really of guitars, bass, keys, and the drums. We're lucky enough to have a drummer who can sing, but for all of you that have tried to record drums with a singing drummer, you'll know that whatever microphone you pick up, all that spill, all that noise from the drums, it's okay, because in our case the drummer sings a lot of the high parts, so they do tend to cut through, so we sort of get away with that. I think if he was singing lower melodies, they'd be lost in the sort of general mush of the drum kit. But with a Beta 58 in our case right on his lips, the spill is usable, it's controllable, and we don't get any real grief with that. So that's the way that we do that. Our keyboard player used back in the 80s and 90s a Korg M1, and because the band's been going for a very long time, he's got a couple of M1s, one for a spare, and with all the memory cards, they've got all of the sounds that the Beach Boys songs need. He uses an up and a down pedal, and he breaks the keyboard into perhaps 2 or 3 zones. So in one song for the chorus, he might have a saxophone sound with an electric piano, and something else perhaps in the left hand for the bass. For the rest of the song it might be a proper piano, and he switches through program by program as he plays. So he plays with two hands, and with his feet he can actually go through all the sounds that he needs. One of the big problems, of course, is that the M1 is a very old keyboard. Its sounds are not terrifically authentic. The piano's a bit thin, the saxophone in my ears is a bit of a kazoo, but he couldn't find anything that would do the same as he had, as simply. He just plugs a couple of pedals in and just goes up through the programs. So that worked quite well for us. We've got the keys sorted. The bass player, in this particular example, that's me. One sound pretty much throughout all the Beach Boys tracks. A lot of the Beach Boys bass sounds were played with Brian Wilson's thumb on stage. Not so much in the recordings, but on stage he tended to play them with the thumb, so they're very doom 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 type noises. So that's not particularly hard to replicate that sort of authentic sound just by not making the bass too bright and too strident and leaving it with just the bottom end. So that works okay. Guitars, lots of jangly guitars. 6 strings, jangly 12 strings in some songs. But live use, we've got the guitar down to pedal board on the floor and one guitar. In our case, it's a Strat. And that's pretty much as we can do. The bass player who was in the band before me used to have 2 basses, because the Beach Boys have a lot of songs that are in E flat. So he had one bass for E flat and one bass for E tuning. And when I joined to replace Pete, I've always played 5 strings, so I didn't need to change guitars. So I just had one bass, and that one bass did me for every single song. Slightly unusually, I tended to play it higher up the neck and use the bottom B string for a lot of the songs. With that sort of slightly dull sound that was needed, it worked quite well. The snag, of course, with all of this is that we are stuck for 4 voices. What I've prepared is our studio recording of a bit of I Get Around, and then the same song as we performed it on stage, with just the instruments and 4 voices. Pretty much with all the Beach Boys songs, all 4 of us sing pretty well all the way through the song. The slightly confusing part is that with the Beach Boys on stage, there was very rarely ever a lead vocalist. There would be sort of featured people who would be down the front, but the snag would be that you'd have somebody who would do the chorus as a lead, somebody might be doing half of a verse as the lead, and then it would swap around a bit. So sound man's nightmare, in that someone is singing BVs, suddenly singing a more important part, then they go back to doing BVs, and somebody else will pick up the lead line. So it's sort of thrown around a wee bit. Now, from the perspective of a stage show, one of our other little things that has to be done is working out, what do we do about stereo? If we pan everybody near the middle, people both sides will hear everything. But we've got 4-part harmony, so we need to sort of flesh it out a little bit. Now, you could pan me to the left, the drummer to the right, the guitarist could be near the middle one way, and the keys could be near the middle the other way. But that wouldn't really be right, because people who were on the left-hand side of an auditorium would only hear 2 people properly. The other 2 would be too low in the mix. And so if it's a harmony thing, then you don't want 2 of your 4 notes to be lower. So pretty much it's mixed in mono. And that's a big difference from an original 2. So anyway, here comes the CD version of the I Get Around.
always take my car, cause it's never been beat. And we never miss the act with the girls we meet. None of the guys going steady, cause it wouldn't be right to leave your best girl home on a Saturday night. I get around, round, round, I get around. 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 I get around, round, get around. I get around, yeah. Get around, round, round, I get around. 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 I get around.
So that's the one that we're going to try and imitate as best we can on stage, live. No tracks, just live. So what we've got now are the 4 vocals all panned in the middle. So it's basically a bit of panning on the drums, not much of anything else, and 4 mono vocals.
We always take my car, cause it's never been beat. And we never miss the act with the girls we meet. None of the guys going steady, cause it wouldn't be right to leave your best girl home on a Saturday night. I get around, round, round, I get around. 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 I get around, get around, I get around. Get around, round, round, 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 I get around. I get around.
Right, what do we do to make that better? Well, if you've got a digital mixer, you do have some other options. One of the things that you can do is use short delays, probably in the region of 10 to maybe 15, 16 milliseconds. So you could pan a vocal left, pan the same vocal right, but give them different amounts of delay. So that the left and the right are happening at different times. So someone on one side will hear all of the 4 notes from the 4 people, and a copy of it slightly later because it's further away, but also delayed. And that brings your fader count either to double, and you actually have a left and a right treated version all on faders, or depending on how you set the effects up, you can actually just have one fader and it splits into 2 inside the processor and comes out 1. I mean, you'll need 2 stereo processors that will let you shift things in time, one pan to one side, one pan to the other, but your 4 inputs on the desk can actually be effectively 8 voices, sort of double tracked. It's the same source obviously, but they're coming out at slightly different times, and that works like this.
We always take my car, cause it's never been beat. And we never miss the act with the girls we meet. None of the guys going steady, cause it wouldn't be right to leave your best girl home on a Saturday night. I get around, round, round, I get around. Get around, round, round, I get around. Get around, round, round, I get around. Get around, round, round, I
we've now got sort of 8 voices. They're thicker. If we now stick on some gentle reverb, you've actually got something that sounds like this.
We always take my car 'cause it's never been beat, and we never miss the act with the girls we meet. None of the guys going steady 'cause it wouldn't be right to leave your best girl home on a Saturday night. I get around, round, round, I get around. 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 I get around. Round, get around, I get around. Get around, round, round, 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 I get around. I get around.
Now, that is the way that you can do it live with not too much bother, especially if you've got one of the modern mixers that's got lots of internal effects that you can just patch in, tweak and then route out. So you can get sort of 8 voices from a 4-piece, but you're still limited to those 4. If you want to go further than this, then you're going to have to start to use tracks. Now, as soon as you move to tracks, you lose quite a lot of options. The one thing that our band were notorious for were talking to the audience, not just in between the numbers, but sometimes over the start of the next song. Ian, our band leader, who sort of knew all these Beach Boys tracks inside and out, would invariably be telling stories along the lines of how these things were recorded and how when they went out on the road they didn't actually have Brian Wilson, because Brian Wilson was back in the studio recording and arranging the next one they were going to do. So 3/4 of the band would go out on the road, sometimes with him but mostly without him. What actually happened to us would be that we'd start to play a song and Ian would carry on talking to the audience, telling a bit of the background over the top of maybe the first 8 bars that we just repeat and repeat and repeat while he was talking. And then he'd suddenly go 1, 2, 3, 4 and we'd be into the song. Well, when you start to use tracks, that's got to go. It's just not feasible to actually vamp, change, extend, do an extra chorus, any of those type of things. So if your band do those as part of your show, how on earth are you supposed to carry on if you start using tracks? Well, you can't. You can try and break down the songs into chunks, which if you use things like QLab to replay them, would work. You could actually have a vamp set up and then on the 1, 2, 3, 4, somebody in the band or the sound guy could actually press a button and it would then go into the next bit of the song. And if you knew that sometimes you wanted to do an extra chorus, you could do that. It would be pretty complicated to set up. And worse, everybody in the band have to really be on the ball, because if you do a show where one night you do an extra chorus and the next night you don't, when you're playing live, you sort of get that sort of hint in the music. If it's on tracks, there's no hint. It's just a case of, do I push this button now and do an extra chorus, or do I not push the button and it'll go through to the end? That's a decision for you to make. In our band, we had always prided ourselves on being totally live. So really, it was just us 4 guys on the stage, and we would just start. At the end of the show, we'd stop. sometimes we'd stop a song in the middle and ask the audience, I said, did you want this one? So, and they'd go, yeah. So, we'll do it again then. So, we'd play it again. We used to sort of do deliberate mistakes. Quite often we'd pretend that Ian had got the wrong song. He'd start to sing one song that had got a very familiar beginning, and we'd all play something different. So we were always up for having a bit of fun, and it worked quite nicely. We'd also do medleys as well. So if we were doing 260 minutes, then it was quite likely we'd do what we used to call the surf medley. And the surf medley for the Beach Boys was 5 or 6 of their songs that were well known, so sort of the beach type songs. And if we had the time, we would do the 5-song version of the medley. If we were a bit short of time, if we were overrunning, then we might just do the 3-song version. And with medleys, again, that's the thing that would really fox a track. It would need to know which one is it. You can imagine thinking you're doing a 5-song medley, and when it gets to the middle, you start to sing the wrong song. You don't want things to work like that. So we always used to say, keep music live, and performing totally unaided, and it was just us. I mean, sometimes it does mean that we had parts missing, because if there was a 5-piece vocal harmony section in a song and all 5 parts were really important, then what do you do if you've only got 4 voices? So what we would do is remove the least critical line and give that the new one. Sometimes this would mean that you'd have to stop singing in the middle of a word. Good vibrations was a good example of that, where good vi, and somebody else might sing rations. It's just the way you could turn a 4-part into a 5-part just by losing one particular track. For our Beach Boys show, playing live with 4 people worked really well. And while we could have stuck the thing on a track, it would have robbed us of that flexibility to be able to repeat a chorus, or indeed scrap one song at the last minute from our set list. If you were using tracks, scrapping things is possible, but somebody's actually got to press buttons, touch screens, do that sort of thing to make it happen. And we were not really rigid enough in how we did things to actually work that way. The plan was to add tracks. I mean, at some stage it would have been nice to up the quality by being able to add in some things that we couldn't do. So if we wanted 5 or 6 vocal lines, we could have had them. We could have had extra other instruments that the Beach Boys added in their live sets. We decided though we wouldn't do that, and we stuck with saying keep music live. In actual fact, there was no real drive to keep it live. It's just that it let us have a better time, and I think the audience benefited, because sometimes if somebody would yell out the name of a song, we could actually scrap the one that we intended to sing and give the audience exactly what they wanted. In a track show, that becomes either impossible or just really, really difficult to achieve. In the next part of this video, we'll start to look at tracks and the equipment you need to actually make them play back, whether it's going to be a computer-based system or a hardware-based system, and how you have to go to great lengths to get clicks into people's ears. Fundamental part of playing to tracks is learning to use a click, and that is not an easy thing to learn. So that comes in the next bit. See you on that one. Take care. Look after yourselves.